All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Empowering Minds Mental Health Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Tiffany Ruder. She's a pharmacist, perimenopause specialist, and founder of Better Health and Hormone Balance, LLC. And what I love about Dr. Ruder is how she's real about women's health and how she breaks things down in a way that actually makes sense. So today we're going to talk about hormones and how they connect to our mental health, our energy, and emotions. So Dr. Rutter, thank you for agreeing to come on today.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here. And honestly, I forgot to tell you, it's actually pronounced Reuter.
Rude,
It
I'm
is,
so
no,
sorry.
it's okay. It's okay. It's my married name, so it's not like I exactly like picked it. But that's it's pronounced Reuter, but I promise I'm very nice. I'm not rude.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you for the
Yeah.
correction on that too. So I'll remember that going forward.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me on. I'm so excited to be here today.
Okay, all right. So Um, well, before I jump into the questions,
Yeah,
I guess if you want to just give the audience a little bit, information about yourself, what do you
sure.
do, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I graduated from pharmacy school in 2012, and I have worked big chain retail like ever since I was in college. So before pharmacy school, all the things, I just fell in love with pharmacy. So I did that for a number of years, served a lot of people, loved it. I recently started working at a small compounding pharmacy, and that opened up my eyes and world to hormones and hormone replacement therapy, and really just kind of what's happening in our body during that perimenopause transition. But as you're probably aware, when you go to your pharmacy, you see someone for what, a couple of minutes. It's a quick interaction, you're in and out. You don't
Hmm.
really get a chance to have your story be heard. You don't really get a chance to have that one-on-one guidance that you might need.
Hmm.
And I just saw there's such a huge gap currently in our current healthcare model addressing women in perimenopause.
Hmm.
They are underserved, they're being dismissed, they're being misunderstood. And unfortunately, that is putting them in a position to start doing a little bit self-knowledge. So they're going to the group chats and
Yeah.
they're following the influencer trend and they're
Hmm.
jumping on like the next thing that social media has, and they're not getting the sound information. So I just felt a huge calling to fill that gap. So that gap in knowledge and education with as being a pharmacist, I'm always research and science based.
Hmm.
Everything is evidence based. But I get to marry that with giving people with like essentially coaching, personal coaching, so I can give that woman the time and space that they really need to be heard and to be held. And then together through that process, then we find the healing that they actually deserve. And so that's kind of what spurred my journey. And I felt just such a strong calling to fill that gap in our healthcare system for women that are in perimenopause.
Okay. All right. So with that being said, I want to jump right into the
Yeah,
first question. So
yeah,
what I did, um, on my social media page, I kind of reached out to the ladies and kind of asked
yeah,
them what are some questions that you would like answers to. And so that's what these
yeah.
questions are based on today. So,
Okay.
first question, I can say hot topic, and I don't mean that, no pun intended.
Nope.
'Cause it's a hot. One thing so many women talk about during perimenopause is weight gain, even
Yeah,
when they're eating the same and staying active. So what they wanted to know, what's really going on there and how can they start to manage that in a healthy way?
sure. So weight gain is obvious. It's definitely, I would say, number one issue, and it's really why a lot of women actually start reaching out to me before other symptoms become more of an issue. So during perimenopause, it's really marked by a time of wild hormone fluctuations. So
Mm-hmm.
normally our body is on like a 28-day cycle. We call it 28 days roughly. Every woman's a little bit different. Sometimes it's
Hmm.
30, sometimes it's less. Um, where we normally have cycles of estrogen building up and testosterone, and then we have another cycle of progesterone building up. So it goes through this nice normal rhythm, even though it feels a little chaotic throughout the month. It has a normal rhythm, and it's really around a little bit around fertility. So releasing that egg, preparing the body for pregnancy. Well, during perimenopause, as our bodies are not producing the eggs in the way they normally used to, as our body transitions through that phase,
Hmm.
we start having these wild hormone fluctuations. So sometimes estrogen will show up, sometimes progesterone shows up, sometimes they both just ghost us and we feel pretty
Mhm.
miserable. So a lot of what happens, especially as we start declining in our estrogen, that is when we start seeing that weight gain. And it's funny because it's not just weight gain like all over, it's typically that visceral stomach belly weight gain.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
that is due to the declining estrogen. So, your normal things that you used to do, especially I see a lot of women that are cardio bunnies, right? They're just on the elliptical or whatever, just trying to
Mm-hmm.
burn calories. I see women that are half starving themselves. They're doing all this fasting, they're eating small because 20 years ago, when they were 20, it worked really well. Like for me, I could look at a salad when I was 20. I didn't even have to eat it. And I felt like I could lose 5 pounds. But we also had a lot of good hormones back in our 20s. So now we got to upgrade our system, right? You don't have the iPhone from when you were, even 5 years ago. Like, let's
Mm-hmm.
upgrade. So now we really need to focus on nourishing our body, not stressing
Mm-hmm.
it. We really want to give back to our body. We don't want to deplete it. Like we have been in such a mental mindset, especially as women in society. We feel like we need to take things away. We need to take away the fat, or we need to take away the calories. We need to take away this. We need to burn the extra calories. We need to, it's always this like deficit. And what we really need to do is shift our mindset of adding more nutritious foods, and
Mm-hmm.
then looking at the other things that can cause issues. So if you have wildly fluctuating blood sugars, if they're up and down all the time, that's going to contribute to more of that visceral fat gain. So we are really looking at evening out those blood sugars, making sure that we have healthy meals that include a protein, a healthy fat, and fiber, because
Mm-hmm.
that's what really helps your body stay stabilized. So when I see someone that is barely eating, running, an hour on the elliptical, they are really depleting their body of nutrients, and their body it'll keep holding on. Because if it doesn't feel safe and it doesn't feel like the resources are there, it's going to hold on to a resource. And a really great resource is fat. Our brains are made of fat. Our body
Mm-hmm.
needs fat to make healthy hormones. And if you think you're going to deplete your body of that, it will hold on to it even stronger. So we really need to look at how are we nurturing our body through our nutrition? What does our exercise look like? Is our exercise energizing or is it depleting?
Mm-hmm.
Are we looking at then the blood sugar balance? And then my final piece I'll say about it is also our sleep and our sleep quality, because we really need to give our body back the rest it needs, the restoration, and we really need to let our body have that normal cortisol curve, not a dysregulated cortisol. So when our body is in a constant stress or a constant fight or flight phase, our cortisol cannot regulate the way it's supposed to, and that can also contribute to more visceral fat gain. So we really want to look at you as a whole, all the pieces of the puzzle: nutrition, exercise, sleep, and stress management, and
Mm-hmm.
see where we can optimize those areas where you're really nurturing and giving back to yourself. We're not taking away and we're not depleting.
You said something interesting. I just thought about this. This was not a
Yeah.
question, but you mentioned about hormones
Yeah.
fluctuating. Do you does that contribute towards? I know that some women were talking about having facial hair on
Mm,
their chin. So
yeah.
is that kind of tied in because of the hormones as well?
It does. So with the fluctuating hormones, sometimes
Mm-hmm.
we have also different hormones will show up. So sometimes, especially like the chin hair or like the thinning hair, those are
Uh-huh.
actually due to androgens, but not specifically just testosterone, because testosterone is a great hormone for women to have. It's the broken down product. So it's kind of like that breakdown of testosterone that can contribute to that. And normally the body is in a nice balance of estrogen and testosterone and progesterone, but because our hormones are now fluctuating, we're kind of getting a little bit off. We really like to look at, and for
Mm-hmm.
me personally, with my clients, I really like to do some testing, hormone testing, but we're looking at also those metabolites. So, metabolites are the broken down product.
Mm-hmm.
So, how is your body breaking down and excreting estrogen once it's done being used? How's your body breaking down and excreting testosterone once it's done being used? Because if you're not excreting it or releasing it, letting it leave the body, it's
Mm-hmm.
not the way it's supposed to, then your body can sometimes start recycling it. But that's also when we start seeing some of those side effects show up. So we start getting a little bit of chin hair. We start getting a little bit like thinner hair, like the male pattern baldness. We can start seeing
Mm-hmm.
that. And so we do want to really, we don't want to just only put everything on lab values, but we do want to look at that. So I have an idea of kind of like how is your body functioning and how is it fluctuating? So we have an idea to guide the, to guide the game plan. So we have an idea of where are we going to optimize in those cases.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Um, the next question, a lot of women wanted to talk about hot flashes and brain fog. And they
Hmm.
wanted some information around what is really happening in their bodies when those hit. And is there anything that can actually help them with hot flashes and brain fog?
Sure. So I'll probably tackle them a little bit separately just because
Mhm.
there's typically different hormone players going on. A lot of times that the fluctuating estrogen, it's tough because estrogen and progesterone are actually in this delicate balance. So sometimes it's that you have low estrogen that's causing these hot flashes to occur.
Mhm.
So we would look at things to support healthier, better estrogen.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's a decrease in progesterone, and essentially it seems as if your estrogen is too high and progesterone isn't doing its job to balance it out. And sometimes that can cause it. So again, sometimes we will look at hormones. We will also typically look at, is it occurring every single day? Is it occurring certain times in your cycle? Like if you're still having somewhat regular cycles, are you noticing those at a different time? Maybe early in
Mhm.
your cycle, late in your cycle? Is it only at night or are you getting hot flash during the day? Our body does become a little less resilient to stress, which is unfortunate because this is a very stressful time.
Yes.
But I've met women, they said just going on like a Zoom meeting, they start hot flashing all of a sudden because there's almost like a stress trigger and their normal body response to, cope and handle that stress isn't there anymore.
Mhm.
So we really need to kind of do a deep dive where we at with that, but things that can help immediately, and it's not what anyone wants to hear. But if you have a very like processed food diet, especially if it has a lot of sugars in your diet, it can make hot flashes worse. And also
Oh.
alcohol, which I don't want. I know some women are like, you can pry my wine for my cold dead fingers. Like I get it. But at the same time, alcohol consumption can actually make those hot flashes worse. So I would start
Oh.
looking at small changes. Even things like warm beverages might influence it. So if you're drinking a lot of like hot coffee, but really those two things, if you can even just start limiting a little bit each day, maybe your sugar intake.
Mhm.
If you can maybe save alcohol for more special occasions as opposed to like a daily habit, those small changes can actually help alleviate the hot flashes sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes the estrogen is just so low, then we would be talking about maybe bioidentical hormone replacement therapy for symptom relief, which is kind of a whole other subject in its own right. But that would also maybe be another tool in the toolbox we're going to use to help support during that time. Now, brain fog can have a lot of factors, but typically I see it's very closely tied to estrogen and testosterone. So those first 2 weeks of your cycle, of a normal cycle, is what we call your follicular phase. And during that phase, we are preparing the body to release an egg. And to do that, we actually increase estrogen and testosterone. So as those are increasing, this is when we feel really, really good. We feel a little bit more mentally clear. We also notice that we're just a little bit more productive. We tend to be a little bit more social. We're ready to go out, meet people, do all the things. And so over time, as estrogen's decreasing, testosterone will also decrease with that. And that is where I've really seen that brain fog start kicking in. So being able to support healthy testosterone, um, it really kind of depends. For a lot of my women, I just want them to start thinking about lifting weights. In general, it's going to increase
Hmm.
muscle mass to protect you against osteoporosis. Like number one thing, after menopause, women are at risk for osteoporosis, cardiovascular disease, and dementia. So, what are we going to do to ensure that that's not going to happen to you? And so, if you're looking at preventative care, if you're in perimenopause and you know in the next 10 years, I don't want to be set up for a hip fracture, for a bone break,
Mhm.
we need to start talking about lifting weights now. Obviously, if you've never lifted weights in your life, I would highly suggest having like a trainer or someone to start guiding you, giving you the basics. But as you increase your muscle mass, not only does it help your metabolic health, so it helps regulate blood sugar, it helps give you a little bit more energy back, but it can help clear the brain fog because you will naturally increase a little bit of your testosterone. Not to the point where you're going to become this like creepy bodybuilder. We are talking normal levels, but that increase of body mass, of that muscle mass, it helps protect your bones, first of all, which is super important for osteoporosis prevention. But as we start increasing the testosterone just a little bit, you will notice that brain fog will start to decrease. And then for some of my clients, depending on their situation, we also might introduce some creatine. There's been a lot of research
Oh,
and studies showing creatine. Again, I'm not going to turn you into a bodybuilder. I promise, I promise, I promise. You are not going to look like Arnold. We are really just trying to give your body back some of the little building blocks, some of the substrates. We're using all the tools in the toolbox to
mm-hmm.
help with that brain fog. And sometimes creatine can help support that. I usually do that on an individual basis. I wouldn't use it as like a blanket recommendation, but I've seen so much research and supporting creatine use, especially in perimenopause women,
Mm-hmm.
not just from, supporting their bones, but from a brain health standpoint, that I do usually use that as a tool in my toolbox.
Okay. I this is good. I'm so glad you
Okay.
shared that.
Yeah.
Um, so with hot flashes, it was, I don't know, maybe in like 2 weeks ago or so. And I was having flashes bad, like left and right.
Mhm.
And so I had laid down and I took a nap. And when I woke up, my son had came by and I felt like it was like super, super hot. And I was like, well, maybe I'm just having another hot flash. And so
Yeah.
when I walked up front, I noticed that he had on a hoodie and he had turned the air off. And I
Oh
was like, how
no,
dare you? You don't turn my air. I
don't
didn't
touch it.
I didn't know how to explain it to him. Like I had to be
Yes.
like where he would
Yeah.
understand. So I'm hoping that he will have a chance to view this so he will kind of
Yes.
better understand like what's going on with me during this transition. And then with the
Yes.
brain fog. So I've been very consistent the last few weeks about returning back to the gym. And I had
Mm-hmm.
thought about the weights. I had been doing like
Yeah.
the elliptical
Yeah.
treadmill. And so
Yeah.
with Planet Fitness, of course, they have these different
Hmm.
trainers and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I'm going to schedule an appointment about because I want to lift correctly. I know myself. I
Yes.
go in there and lift the wrong way and mess something
Yes.
in my body. So I'm glad that you suggested that. So
Yeah.
that's something that can be helpful for other women as well to kind of
Yes.
look into. So thank you for
And
that.
and I know like not everyone has a gym membership or maybe that's intimidating, but I would also maybe start doing, and again, YouTube, there's going to be a disclaimer, but there
Mhm,
are some good YouTube tutorials, literally just your own body weight so you can get like the motion, right? So you
mhm,
can get the posture, so you can understand, your feet should be this wide, your body should be in this position. Start very slowly because I don't want
mhm,
injury. But that would maybe also be like a free option for you if you're still,
mhm,
there's a financial, commitment to a gym. So I understand that. There's
mhm,
also just a little bit intimidation. Most gyms will offer like a free assessment though. So they'll kind of take you through, the step by step, the how to a little bit to kind of get you
mhm,
familiar with it. But yeah, I definitely if you're still intimidated about that, then I would consider YouTube, but again with a caveat, be careful what you're watching and
mhm,
following along. And then truly, I would start no weight and just see how you move with just body weight because your body weight is such a great start too.
mhm,
To have that extra, movement. And I know mobility changes as we get older. We want to stay,
mhm,
mobile. I want to be 80 and put groceries, up on a shelf, or I want to be able to pull them out of a car.
mhm.
I want to be able to get off the toilet by myself at 80. And
Yeah.
that starts with doing like squats today, right? So we need to kind of do those
Mhm,
movements, that mobility, that strength now. So we have it when we're older. We can't start at 70 hoping to get through to 80. We got to start 40, 50. This is
yeah.
like prime time to start thinking about what does our longevity look like 20, 30 years down the road.
Gotcha. I'm glad you did say that because YouTube, they do have a lot of good videos. In fact,
Yes.
there's
Yeah.
one, I think her name is Leslie Sanzone, and she does these walking like cardio videos,
Yeah.
but she has like, I don't know if you would call them like dumbbells or like light weights, and I
Sure.
know she uses those, and uh, I need to get better because I have a
Yeah.
pair in my my armoire from Walmart. I've had them in there 2 years, and I bet you I've picked them up twice. So that's something.
Yeah, that's a start. There we go.
So that's
I
something I
also
can incorporate at home.
I'm a big fan of the weighted vest. We just need to be kind
Hmm.
of, again, cautious because it changes your
Yeah.
posture. When you put that weighted vest on, all of a sudden your core is engaged, your glutes are engaged, like
Hmm.
everything changes.
Hmm.
But that's again, it's a great way to add just a little extra resistance to
Yeah.
start engaging muscles that your body needs. And I mean, and it, not only just from a hormone health, but just metabolically, like your body uses, your muscles can use a lot of sugar. So instead of letting it circulate around and trying to be stored as fat, like your muscles love having sugar. And so when you can start incorporating even just like 5 minutes after a meal, like, right? So you eat your meal,
Hmm.
maybe go for like a 5 minute walk. It allows some of that extra sugar to get pulled into the muscle where it belongs for growth and for more metabolic um, health, for better
Hmm.
blood sugar balance. Not to mention, a walk is so great from like mental health standpoint, which obviously
Yeah.
you're big on. It helps decrease stress. Being in nature helps us kind of unwind and kind of do that that de-stressing. So definitely, it doesn't have to be a big thing, right? It doesn't have to be an hour at the gym. We're talking just small movements throughout the
Hmm.
day that are going to have the biggest impact and the biggest payoff.
Sounds good. Thank you for this is I know this is going to be helpful to a lot of
Good,
women. I know it's helping me. So
good.
thank you for the education around these
Yeah.
questions. And so my next question, a lot of women, they wanted to talk about breast pain and tenderness
Mhm.
and what
Mhm.
causes that during perimenopause and when should they be concerned enough to, maybe reach out to their doctor or their specialist for a checkup.
Sure. So, a couple of things with that. I do believe at the age of 40, most insurances will cover your first mammogram. So, mammogram plug. Not comfortable, painful, nobody likes them, but I am going to plug getting a regular mammogram. It is really important to catch those things. Women obviously are at very high risk for breast cancer. So let's at least start there. Like, let's just make sure we're kind of doing some of those healthier habits.
Hmm.
Secondly, with it is, we kind of talked about how estrogen and progesterone kind of do this dance. So what happens during perimenopause, especially, estrogen tends to be produced at a fairly like normal level, which again, I never like saying like things are normal, but apparently like a fairly normal amount. What happens is that progesterone, when it should be peaking and increasing over those last two phases or last 2 weeks of your cycle before your period, progesterone doesn't show up. So
Mm.
she kind of goes. And when she does that, now we have estrogen that's almost like unopposed. So they like to do this balance. And what happens is not that your estrogen is necessarily higher than normal, but when it's not being regulated by progesterone, like doing this dance, sometimes you'll notice that breast tenderness and breast pain, also heavier periods. You may notice that they're heavier, they're longer. You may notice even like clotting in the period. So be aware of that. It also may mean that not only is your estrogen maybe a little bit unopposed, but you may not be breaking down your estrogen the way you're supposed to. So your estrogen breakdown in your body, it's supposed to go through a specific pathway to essentially be excreted. And we do excrete some of our estrogen in our bowel movements. So if you're not having a daily bowel movement, if you don't have a lot of good fiber in your diet,
Hmm.
your body will actually start recycling that estrogen back into the body. So now we have all these ugly, broken down estrogens that are still kind of binding to an estrogen receptor. So that lock and key is kind of there because it kind of looks like estrogen.
Hmm.
But now it's almost as if we have more estrogen than we should because we have all of our good estrogen plus all these ugly, junky ones. And that can also lead to more breast tenderness, fibroids, where you almost feel like the density in your breast, where it feels like
Hmm.
there's like a knot in the breast. It can lead to fibroids. So we really want to look at essentially we do want to evaluate the diet, right? Like, is it a lot of processed foods? Is it a lot of sugar? But also, what are we doing to help detoxify? So I love cruciferous vegetables. So things like your Brussels sprouts, your broccoli, and then just consistent fiber every day. Like we do want to make sure that we're helping our body as much as we can to use the estrogen and then excrete the estrogen because we don't need it anymore. And that can help with that. Now, if it's a point where it's tender all month long, if you're noticing like a fibroid that's not going away, that is there, then it may be time to at least just have
Mm-hmm.
a conversation with your provider. It may be nothing, it may just need a little ultrasound. But if you're noticing it's pretty consistent and not just a couple of days out of the month, if you're noticing like really bad pain pretty much all month long, especially if there's any discharge associated with it,
Mm-hmm.
please go see your provider. Like, please get it checked out. Don't let these things kind of fester. Um, and then typically they say after your cycle, like those first couple of days after your period, that's a great time to do a self-examination.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when most of your hormones are kind of low. So day one of bleed is day one of cycle. So maybe days like 3 to 4 would be a great time for you to do a self-examination and
Mm-hmm.
see, like, did that tenderness go away? Did, some of those fibroid, I want to make sure that there is a change, because more than likely that's a hormonal impact. But if there's not a lot of changes and things are still feeling not right, like, trust your intuition. If something doesn't feel
Mm-hmm.
right, don't just think like, oh, don't keep pushing it off. Get it checked out because we just want to make sure we're covering all of our bases. So much easier to intervene early on
Mm-hmm.
than late in the game.
Gotcha. Thank you, because this
Yeah.
is your answer helped me because when I first started experiencing that, the first time I was kind of like, okay. But then I noticed it was like a pattern around like the same
Yes.
time. And it
Yeah.
actually, to be honest with you, it kind of scared me because I'm like, I had a great mammogram last year. Like, what's going on? I didn't realize that this was a part of perimenopause.
Mhm.
So I did.
Yes.
I had a in-depth, I had went back for another mammogram
Mhm.
uh probably about 2 months ago when they did the ultrasound and they, explained it to me about
Yeah.
my hormones and I was like,
Right.
wow, it having that exam and having the medical professionals, that medical
Mhm.
team really helped me to better understand like what my
Yeah.
body was going through. And so yeah, I do notice it's kind of like around a certain time of the month
Mhm.
that I'll feel
Mhm.
that. So thank
Mhm.
you for your answer because that
Yeah.
was it helped me too. And
And I think
so
I was just going to say, when you build that awareness, then you can kind of anticipate it too.
mhm,
So maybe it's not so scary, right? So now you're like, okay,
right.
I know this is coming, right? But then also we're going to look at, again, kind of like maybe some diet things, like what are some things we're going to do to build you up for more success around that time, as well as maybe even like your schedule. Maybe it's not a time where you're wearing that like super form-fitting dress and you're wearing, like maybe if you can kind of like plan around it. I'm not going to
Mhm,
feel too good these couple of days, so I'm going to try and be really aware of my limits, right? Like just
mhm,
kind of bringing more awareness to it so you can kind of anticipate. Because to me, that's where I feel like I have more control over my body, as opposed to these
yeah.
things just like hitting you one after the other. You almost feel this like loss of control. You don't know what's going on. Is this normal? Is it not?
Mhm,
Am I supposed to have this? So when we can start bringing awareness in the education, which is such a huge foundation of the work I do, it also allows us then to anticipate and have that control. So you know what's coming, and you can like kind of work around it, anticipate it. It just gives you such a more empowering feeling, really, as opposed to being blindsided.
and you've mentioned a key word, or I think it's a key word. You've mentioned the word education several
Mhm.
times. And I'm so grateful for that because that's what this podcast is about bringing education and awareness around the stigmas of different things that can
Yes.
impact, your mental
Yeah.
health. So thank you
Yeah.
again for coming on. I
Yeah.
really appreciate that. Yeah. And so my last question for you
Mhm.
today, and this is a stigma.
Okay.
There's
Yeah.
often a lot of shame or silence around aging, becoming older,
Mhm. Mhm.
perimenopause, menopause.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it's almost like some women I've spoken to, it's almost like a shame instead of
Hmm.
like
It is.
a honor, right?
Right,
So the
right.
question that I had from some of the ladies, how can we start to reframe perimenopause and menopause as a rite of passage or season of strength and wisdom instead of like
Mm.
a breakdown or like a negative stigma attached to it?
Sure. I can completely relate with all of your listeners because it can feel like such a shameful time. And I think a lot of it comes from the fact that we've been so conditioned really in society that women are very valuable when they're young and they're fertile. And they're also very well rewarded when they're kind of like the people pleaser. So, like, you
Mm-hmm.
can see it in society when you are doing everything for everyone else, when you always say yes and you never say no,
Mm-hmm.
when you're the happy homemaker and you're juggling all the things. Like, as women, we get kind of rewarded for doing that. And it's
Mm-hmm.
tough because now we're going through this like transition and society is kind of like pulling it away from us. Like you're no longer valuable. And it can, I mean, it can honestly just feel it hurts. It's so disheartening. But instead of thinking of this as like a loss, we really need to re-change the mindset to like we're being given back, right? We're giving this gift is being given back to us.
Mm-hmm.
So from a biological standpoint, menopause really is not your body like breaking down. It's not becoming, sent out to pasture. It's really your body is recalibrating. Okay, so we're shifting. We have shifting hormones, right? But your body is doing that, so you can step into this new phase that's going to require different energy, different
Mm-hmm.
priorities, a deeper kind of strength, and honestly, maybe some new boundaries to set. And I think sometimes that shame and almost like a guilt or like it's such an ugly feeling. I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of that comes from maybe a fear because in general, our bodies and our brains love everything that's familiar. And this feels like such an unfamiliar time, right? Like you said,
Yeah.
one day you wake up and you have breast tenderness and you're thinking, what's going on? Do I have
Mm-hmm.
cancer? The next day you're hot flashing, you're thinking, how do I get control of this? You wake up and it feels like you gained 30 pounds in your med section, right? Like these are very unfamiliar, uncharted times. And our body and our brain kind of are like under attack. Like, what is happening? What's going on?
Yeah.
And so I know that that can kind of that it's almost a fear, right? It's almost a fear response. And I think that kind of ties into a little bit of that shame. Especially in this phase of our lives, we have probably spent decades of really identifying ourselves as being productive, as the
Mm-hmm.
mom who has it all together, as the caretaker, as the, whatever that hat or that role was, we spent probably decades doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was our identity. We were raising little kids that needed us all the time. We were, the chair on the brownie, like whatever it was. Maybe you were captain of this or PTA mom, and you did that. You
Mm-hmm.
just did all these things for everyone else. And now you kind of don't do those things anymore because your kids are a little bit older and like some of those priorities shift. And I know that that can kind of feel like honestly just like an identity crisis, right? So now all of a
Yeah.
sudden it's like, who am I? And physically you're dealing with a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
So I think instinctively we try and cling to like what we know and what's familiar because we like familiarity. We don't like the unknown. Um, and so it's really with that, like I think we should approach the menopause or this menopause phase really with just like some questions. Like who is this woman I'm going to become? Like one
Mm-hmm.
activity I really like to do instead of journaling about the past, right? Instead of like, oh, I used to do this, I used to do this, I like to journal to my future self. And sometimes I even like to write it as my future self. So 2 years from now, this is what I'm doing. These are the boundaries. This is how I'm pouring into my kids. This is the woman I'm becoming
Mm-hmm.
because then it trains your nervous system in your body like this is familiar. This is safe. This is okay. And you can kind of change then that transition as opposed to, lamenting your old self, your old identity. You can start stepping into this new identity, a woman who is wiser, a woman who has new energy, a woman who
Mm-hmm.
is setting strong boundaries, a woman who is using the word no as a complete sentence
Yep.
because it is one.
It is.
And I think this is a great time to really find your new self, come back home to yourself of who you are and really to be your most authentic self and to see menopause not as a breakdown, but a breakthrough. Like this is the bridge you're going to take to go from this old people pleasing, doing everything for everyone woman to finally living for you, living for her, living the way that you feel most authentic and most aligned with where you're at.
Okay. Well, I thank you for
Yeah.
again helping to empower minds. This is the name of the podcast. So
Yeah, I love it.
you've been very helpful today. So I thank you for that. And before we sign off, do you have any final thoughts or advice that you would like to share with the listeners who will listen to this later on? And what's the best place for them to follow your work on social media or get in contact with you for services? If you've written any books or anything like that, please
Yeah.
feel free to share.
Sure. So first and foremost, you're not broken. A lot of this is biology. So first of all, you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. This is biology. It's a biological response to a certain time of your life. So just give yourself that permission, that validation, that grace that there is nothing wrong with you. You are not
Mhm,
broken. Second of all, the work that I do, I use essentially a foundation of being heard, being held, and then together we find the healing. So if
mhm,
you're done with the medical model that kind of shuffles you around and maybe keeps you kind of sick, and you're done being dismissed and you're done being told, like, oh, your labs are normal, I can't do anything about it, there's so much more we can still do
mhm,
together. There's so much internal work. There's so much we can address from like a holistic standpoint. So I use evidence-based holistic hormone strategies. So we're using the science to drive, the strategies we're using. And so from that, I would just encourage you, if you're interested, I offer free 15-minute discovery calls. You and I can just chat for 15 minutes, tell me what's going on. We do it on Zoom. I get to see you, you get to see me, and we kind
mhm.
of figure out what the next step looks like for you to get you in your healing journey. You can find me on social media. So I'm active on Instagram. I'm the Optimize Her. So OPTIMIZEHER pharmacist, PHARMAICT. If you're on Facebook, you can find me as Tiffany Ruder. So TIFFANYRUDER. And then I have a very active Facebook group called the Optimize Her Facebook group. So optimize and then HER, because it's all about her. You can join that Facebook group. It's a private Facebook group, but I give you tips, tricks. Every week I'm doing what's called Talks with a Pharmacist Tuesday. Today I talked about tea cycling. So there is a way that you can cycle teas to help support your hormones. So I always get little tidbits and information. There is a lot of stuff, a lot of content I will put in that Facebook group that you won't find on any of my other socials. And then if you're ready to book that discovery call, you can either use the link in my Instagram or you can go to my website, optimize, so OPTIMIZE dash her.com. And then we can have that conversation from there. You can schedule your discovery call, you can email me, and we can start that conversation because I know the first step is that conversation, that connection, and then we're kind of about the education, and we're going to
Mhm.
work through it because it really needs to be individualized to you. Everyone's story is unique, and I honor that. And I want to make sure that you feel that honored as well. So
All
yeah,
right.
and thank you for having me. This was so wonderful. I love our conversation.
Yes, thank you so much. And I'll be in contact with you soon. So in the
Yes.
description for the viewers, I'm going to put your social media links, how to contact you,
Yeah.
things like that in case people want to
Yeah.
contact you directly. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'd love
Okay.
that. Okay.
Sounds
Thank you
good.
so
Thank
much. I
you.
appreciate it.
Take care. Have a good one.
You too.
Thank you again. All right. Bye-bye.